Hi, my name is Arnabatic, and welcome to my Journeys Project presentation on the Trail of Tears. So, let's jump right into it then. This is my handmade map and statistics table about the trail, but I'll go into more detail about those later. First, here's some context about the trail and the removal process as a whole. It all started when America felt the need to expand its territory into Native American homelands, and there were two solutions in mind: civilization and removal. Civilization meant that Native Americans would assimilate into white culture, learning English, becoming farmers, becoming Christian, as well as owning land. Basically, Native Americans would quote-unquote become American. The other idea, removal, was the belief that the civilization idea would never work, so white Americans had to give land in the West for Native Americans to move to and settle on. Washington was in favor of civilization, so no removal shenanigans happened while he was in office. Still, racist ideas evolved in the minds of American people. Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, favored removal, so when he was elected in 1828, he made sure that the Indian Removal Act got passed by Congress, which happened in 1830. In 1831, Georgia decided to take over Cherokee land. Some infuriated Cherokee leaders went to the Supreme Court and argued to continue living on their father's native land. They supported their case by telling the jury that they had adopted Christianity, Western education, and a European-style legislature/legal system to convince white America that they were not savages. The judges agreed that it was, and I quote, unconstitutional and disgusting behavior, but Jackson and Congress silently ignored the ruling and continued the removal process. Basically, through the checks and balances system, the executive legislative branches together overruled the judicial branch. After all, two is greater than one. In 1833, a minority faction of the Cherokee, led by Major Ridge, signed the Treaty of New Echota, sealing the deal that they were going to be removed from their homeland. Just imagine how the rest of the Cherokee tribe, whose families had been living on those lands for longer than even written history can date back to, imagine how they felt about 20 or so Cherokees making such a ginormous decision on their behalf. An absolutely infuriated group of over 15,000 Cherokees, led by Chief John Ross, protested the treaty, even going as far as to kill Major Ridge and his son, Elias Boudreaux, for signing the Treaty of New Echota. Congress blatantly ignored the protest, ratified the treaty in 1836, and brought the Cherokee homeland for the measly price of $5 million. That fateful year was when the destiny of the Cherokee tribe was set in stone, to walk the gruesome Trail of Tears and be violently forced to abandon their homeland. The Cherokee were given 2 small years to move voluntarily. Only about 2,000 of them chose to do so. After all, they were not willing by any stretch of the imagination to abandon their homeland. In 1838, the U.S. sent 7,000 troops to brutally force the Cherokees out of their homes in Georgia and onto the deadly Trail of Tears. Upwards of 8,000 Cherokee died on the trip due to violence and diseases, an astounding 1/3 of the total people that went. So, now I will explain my maps and statistics table. As you can see on the map, I drew the routes that each tribe took on the trail from their homelands, colored yellow, to their respective reservation, colored green. Some tribes had 2 different routes that they were forced to walk on, like the Cherokees and the Creek. Also, the Seminole and Creek routes included water travel through the Gulf of Mexico, which I thought was particularly interesting. On the right side of the table, you can see the exact numbers of each tribe's original population, the treaty that got them removed, number of people removed, years of removal, number of deaths during removal, and the population in the homeland after removal. Something that I found interesting was that there were a lot of black slaves in the tribe's original population, and in the case of the Cherokee, they also had to walk the Trail of Tears, as opposed to being stolen by the American settlers. Number of deaths during removal includes Native Americans who died from military violence and diseases. Choctaw deaths were mainly due to cholera and not military violence. Creek deaths were mainly due to diseases spread in the Indian reservations after they had already walked the trail. Since a ton of people died of diseases or violence in the homeland, population in the homelands after removal means the original population minus Native Americans who were removed and minus the Native Americans who died in the homeland. So basically, the people who remained in the homeland and didn't die. In conclusion, the Trail of Tears was a horrible bloodbath of an experience, causing the separation and deaths of countless Native American families. Thank you for listening to my presentation.